So we just got our first look at what I think is going to be a big part of the future of modding. And although I chose Fallout 4 for the title, this really applies to mods for nearly all games. Fallout 4, Skyrim, New Vegas, and even things like Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky. And of course, what I'm talking about today are collections, the new mod pack or mod list-esque feature coming to NexusMods. As just recently, they give us an outline as well as some videos and a ton of details on how this is all actually going to work. In this video, I want to go over what that is and also why I think this is going to be a really big deal. Why I think for many people out there, this is in some ways going to redefine the way you experience some of these games. And for some of you who are maybe just watching this video and aren't subscribed or don't follow modding too closely, this is something for you. This is something I could see a lot of people that don't typically get deep into modding taking full advantage of. This is a big one, and I feel like it's going to be a big deal going forward. But of course, on the other side of things, in particular with the Bethesda modding community, there's been a lot of back and forth. You can see a lot of mod authors pulling their mods from Nexus over this feature, and more specifically over the rollout and discussion around this feature. But either way, let's first go over what exactly this is going to entail, at least in its initial beta version. So if you're out of the loop, NexusMods is the biggest modding site on PC right now. It has support for all kinds of games, but of course it's biggest with Bethesda games and also sometimes some of the CDPR games with The Witcher and Cyberpunk more recently. And coming up soon, there's going to be collections on NexusMods Next. NexusMods Next is basically going to be a beta version of the website, a sub-website you go to test things early. Beta features for Nexus overall. Collections will just be one of the first major things to be hosted there. And what we can see from some of this footage that they've shared is just a couple of collections, 2 available thus far, but you get a general idea of how this page will feel and how you could probably see this eventually being full of all kinds of different options to scroll through. Then from there, you do have the general collection page. This is functionally pretty similar to a mod page with a few differences. There's some pictures that can be uploaded from the collection author, whoever actually created this bundle of mods. The other general details you'd expect, but also it does list off every mod author that is included in this and every mod included, so you could hover over the mods and get a summary of what exactly you're downloading. And further, a pretty cool feature, you can see the success rate, and this part is pretty interesting, as naturally when you're downloading a ton of mods at once, a lot of times things will go wrong, and if this is a particularly poorly made collection, you can go back and say, hey, this doesn't work, and you could downtick the success rate. So then somebody could come on and just quickly see if it has a super low success rate, you probably want to avoid this one. It's probably not well put together. And something nice about that is the success rate is actually connected to specific versions. So as people update the collections and add, remove, or change mods, the success rate may vary, which is a pretty cool feature. I'm happy that's there from day one. And then the installation process, which is going to vary quite widely depending or not if you have Nexus Premium. So if you do have Premium, which is a subscription service, or you previously could buy a lifetime version, you simply click one button and it transports you to Vortex, which is Nexus's official mod manager, and everything will just start downloading. You can see as things progress and get a brief description of all the mods that are getting added, but that's it. Now you basically just installed, let's say 50 to 100 to 200 mods, depending of course on which collection you actually downloaded. But of course, that is the premium version. That is behind a paywall somewhat. The free version is a bit different. You still do click a button to add it to Vortex and you will go into Vortex, but then you're going to have a prompt where you will have to go to each page and actually download the mod itself, kind of that typical Nexus download process. Although something pretty nice about this, it'll actually lead you directly to the appropriate file, so you won't be confused as to which download. It seems like it really holds your hand there, and after downloading that required file, it'll automatically go to the next one and automatically detect it was downloaded. So you kind of just cycle through and download everything. But of course, if you're using the free version, you could only download one at a time, so this might take a bit, but it does do a good job at holding your hand. And although this is particularly tedious, it doesn't really seem like there's much room for errors as long as you follow the steps as they're presented. And at the end, you do have a pop-up where you could download some optional mods if you want to, as well as there's some conflict resolution files added automatically, regardless of whether you have premium or not. And that's the big part for a lot of users. This is where a lot of people are going to be consuming collections. They also give a brief description on creating them though. It's pretty simple. You basically can just start a totally fresh and new collection or actually adapt your existing mod list into a collection. So you just click a couple of buttons, adapt your existing mod list. That's the example they show on video. Then you can make some edits determining what to include, what files are optional versus required, which version number. And this functionally allows you to clone your existing mod list, and then you could publish that as a collection pretty easily. And although I don't think this will be super popular, it is kind of handy. Let's say you have a mod list that you like. You just publish this on Nexus and even just share it with a couple of your friends like, hey, this is what I'm playing with. Maybe you should try it. Then if your friends, if they have premium at least, can literally click 1 or 2 buttons and have that entire mod list added to their game. It's pretty easy and seamless. And as far as publishing collections do go, it's totally free. You don't need a membership or a premium versus not. And there's a few advanced features they don't really get into, but do mention, like requiring a specific version of a mod, so you may not necessarily want the latest. There's instructions to install mods not hosted on Nexus. They don't show this off, but apparently that can be included also. Bundled content like config files and such, as well as mod installer options. So some different settings to configure when installing individual mods. As far as it goes right now, collections are in a closed testing. You can apply to partake in creating collections, and I'll have a link to this down below. And as far as actually downloading them and using them for yourselves, it seems like just randomly sometimes now when you go on Nexus, you might see a pop-up prompting you to join the beta program where you'll be able to download other people's collections and test them out for yourself. There's no precise release date on this, but based on feedback from the testing phase, we could see an open alpha relatively soon, according to them. As you noticed, one of the big things around this all is Vortex is really the cornerstone for actually getting this all downloaded and implemented. That being, again, Nexus's own mod manager. But of course, a ton of people prefer Mod Organizer 2. And they do mention that they do have plans in the future where they'll release an API and third-party tools can take advantage of this feature. So we could potentially see Mod Organizer 2 support in the future, and even just other tools like Wabbajack support in the future. The Wabbajack dev already mentioned integrating collections into Wabbajack. So that's the preview as it exists right now. And as far as my impressions on this, I actually think this looks really good. I'm quite positive feeling over what I just saw, especially if you're using premium. That's going to run you about $7 a month or $70 a year. And honestly, for me at least, to avoid the headache, especially if you have a full-time job and you want to try out heavily modded load orders, just paying that $7 for 1 month to download the whole thing and then canceling the next month seems really enticing. But I was honestly quite surprised by how helpful the free version was also. It's going to be really annoying and you're going to have to spend a lot of time waiting, but it is still pretty easy to download using the free variant. It's just going to take a lot longer. I can totally envision a future where I tell you a bunch of mods that work well together, even just cover other people's mod lists and then just give you a link to this. And it's a super easy way to distribute mods. Let's go with this. You can have a 200 mod Fallout 4 install, and all you really need to do is download Fallout 4, download Vortex, and if you have Nexus Premium, just click this button and you could have, again, 200 mods on Fallout 4. It's a pretty amazing level of accessibility. Although, one thing that is pretty interesting is this definitely doesn't seem to be quite as advanced as other tools like Wabbajack, most notably. There's two major aspects to this. On one hand, Wabbajack uses Mod Organizer 2, and that is quite a bit of additional functionality. Vortex versus Mod Organizer 2. Mod Organizer 2 simply offers a lot more, brings a lot to the table. So probably coming at some point in the future, but we don't know if that's still a full year away. But also in terms of additional files and patching. Nexus mentions how this is a thing and how there could be some additional files, but they don't really get into it too much here. They just only talk about conflict resolution and not much else. Meaning some of those truly insane, super large mod lists are still really only going to be possible via Wabbajack. But for me, I don't really see that as a huge issue. It does seem like going forward that collections and Wabbajack to some degree will exist in tandem. Collection seems almost like the simpler, more easy to use feature that can't get quite as advanced, while Wabbajack is a bit more hands-on, still easier than doing it manually, but to me, not quite as easy as collections. And collections just seems more user-friendly, being online and just having to download one program in the game itself. And overall, I just really think this could be a really good thing for the future of games overall, not even just Fallout 4 and Skyrim or even New Vegas. I know a ton of people that would just never touch Wabbajack and will definitely try out collections because it's easier to use. It's a lot simpler. And even for myself, or even some of you watching, even though you probably like Fallout 4 mods and follow it somewhat closely if you're watching this channel regularly, there's a lot of other games out there that have super active modding scenes that are supported on Nexus that this feature will also now support. Take Stardew Valley or even Cyberpunk. Maybe you love modding Fallout 4, but when it comes to those games, maybe you just want to download a bunch of mods easily by some curated list that somebody else created. This is going to really bring that to the table on a website you're probably already familiar with a program you may already have downloaded. It's an exciting future, and not only for Bethesda games. I think it'll be a premier aspect of Bethesda games because those games do tend to get the most activity, but it's going to be interesting to see what people can create with this, how extensive some of the load orders can get. I think a few months after collections do go live, we could start seeing some pretty cool and interesting stuff, and I'm definitely excited to test that out. Getting a couple hundred mods into Fallout Fallout 4 or Skyrim can vastly transform the experience, in particular with Skyrim. And I'm sure there's many of you watching who have never experienced that, and I think based off what we saw from this preview and what was shown off in this video, Collections will be the single simplest and quickest way to actually get into a 200 mod deep Skyrim playthrough. So those are my initial thoughts. Again, a bit different than Wabbajack, not quite as advanced as Wabbajack, but again, not really a bad thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you see this as something you're going to use? Can you even use it? Do you have a PC that could mod and run these games? But to me, I'm excited. I'm excited to download and actually create some of my first collections and even share some of those with all of you. With that said, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.